most classic way and where tabbouleh comes from is bulgur wheat. Sounds lovely, doesn't it? How about a nice bowl of bulgur, right? Doesn't sound very good, but I'm telling you, it's tasty. So traditionally, Lebanese dish, bulgur wheat with like chopped parsley and tomatoes and mint and onion, and they put olive oil and lemon juice on it, and they serve it. But we're going to do it with bulgur or your choice of couscous or quinoa instead of the bulgur. But I'm going to demonstrate all three. Let's get busy. Let's do this. All right, here we go. So bulgur wheat option, let's cover that one first. 1 cup of bulgur wheat, put it in a medium-sized stainless steel bowl. First of all, what is bulgur wheat anyway? Well, have you heard of wheat berries? So what's called a wheat berry is like the wheat kernel, okay, from wheat. And they crack the berry. They actually parboil it or steam it, depending on the manufacturer. So they partially cook it, is what I'm trying to say. And then they dry it out, and then they package it. And why they do that, it makes it easier for you to cook. So all you have to do is boil water or broth or whatever you want to do. And once it's boiling, you add it to that and you let that sit for 30 minutes, drain it, and you're done. It's nice and soft, it's great texture, great flavor. We're going to put 2.5 cups of water in a small pot, is what I have here. Water? What are you talking about? Water has no flavor, does. I know. Stop yelling at me. I know that's what you're doing right now. So 2.5 cups of water, we're going to bring that to a boil. And to that, we're going to add 1 teaspoon of salt so we can flavor this up a little bit. And a couple of large cloves of garlic chopped up. We're going to put that. You're boiling garlic in water? Yes, I am. Okay, let me finish. Here we go. We're going to bring that to a boil. Then we're going to pour it on our bulgur, and we're going to let that sit in a bowl for a minimum of 30 minutes, okay? When that's done, we're going to take a wire mesh strainer like this, and we're going to drain it in the sink and let all that run off. You will notice for my couscous option and my quinoa option, I'm using vegetable stock. For this one, I'm using water. Why? You don't cook with water, this. I'm using water because I'm draining it down the sink, okay? I'm throwing it out. I mean, let's get real. I could have done stock. It would absorb stock, and I could just save the residual that I would be draining off and put in the fridge for another application. Hey, you can do that, but the typical way you would cook bulgur is with salted flavored water, and I'm flavoring it with garlic, and I'm salting it, well, with salt, right? And that's how we're going to make our bulgur. We're going to stick to a very classic way. So pretty self-explanatory and very easy. Something unique, something different. You could serve bulgur just as a side dish, just like you would any grain, rice. You could serve it like a pasta. You really could do anything you want with it. So let's let that come to a boil. I'm going to keep this standing by over here, and we will deal with that once we are ready to go. I'm going to put a lid on there so that will come to a boil faster. And let's move on to our quinoa option, shall we? It's not called quinoa, folks. It's not. Okay, it's quinoa. It's actually South American, I believe, is where it originated from. And quinoa, just so you know, is not a grain. It's not. It's a seed. Quinoa is a seed. I'll show you my quinoa here in a second. I'll show you mine if you show me yours. It's very high protein, and they actually call it a complete protein because it has 7 of the 9 essential amino acids that we need for a healthy lifestyle. So because it has 7 of those amino acids, with a high protein content and a low carb content, it's actually classified as a complete protein, not a grain. It's a seed, not a carb, okay, even though it has a little bit of carbs in it, but it's a really, really good option for somebody who is gluten intolerant, doesn't want pasta. You could cook this up, serve it like pasta, serve it like rice, great side dish. So for the quinoa option, I have 2 cups of broth in here. And to our broth, we're going to add our quinoa. Now look at my quinoa. So you can buy 3 different varieties. You can buy white quinoa. You can see in there I have red quinoa and I have black quinoa. There's 3 different types. I bought a blend, which you can do as well, or you can buy any one of those individual types of quinoa. The darker the color, the better the flavor, the better the texture, I think, and it's supposed to be more nutritious for you. So I have a nice blend, and it's going to look very colorful when you have a blend as well in your finished dish. So I'm adding that to my 2 cups of vegetable broth. That's 1 cup of dry quinoa with a ½ teaspoon of salt and 2 large garlic cloves chopped up. There's that boiled garlic again. And don't worry, I'll explain this to you. So we're going to give that a stir, and I'm going to put that on the heat back over here. Let me turn the burner on, and we're going to explain something to you. A lot of people, when they make quinoa, they make it like rice. And what I mean by that is they take their pot, they take their water, the broth, and they put a lid on it like they do their rice. So they bring it to a boil, they put a lid on it, they turn the heat down to low, and they cook it for like, well, rice would be like basmati 10, 12 minutes. And then they cook it that way like rice. I don't want you to do that. That's not the right way, in my opinion, to cook quinoa. If you cook quinoa like rice with the lid, it's going to be oversaturated with the liquid. It's not going to have very good texture. You're not going to have as much flavor because you have too much water content. So here in the case, water has no flavor. By cooking topless, taking the lid off your pot of your quinoa, you're going to evaporate water content. You're not evaporating broth, folks. You're evaporating the water content in the broth. Water has no flavor, water has no color, so you're going to get intensified color and intensified flavor in your quinoa by cooking it topless. You're also going to have increased texture in your quinoa because it's not oversaturated with liquid because you're evaporating some of the liquid out. The downside, is there a downside? There is a downside, is that you're going to have less volume of cooked quinoa versus if you cooked it like rice. Why? Again, you're evaporating some of the water content out through steam. If you kept the lid on, all 100% of the liquid would be absorbed by the quinoa. Thus, it would be that much bigger than if you cooked it with the lid off, cooked it off topless, right? Makes sense? Clear as mud, right? So that's how we're going to cook our quinoa. The other good benefit about cooking it with no lid is that you can keep an eye on it, right? How many times have you overcooked rice or not had enough liquid in there or too much liquid? Oh, it's not done yet. You're not supposed to look at it. Don't let the lid on the rice, right? Everybody's telling you do that. Cook it topless, the quinoa. You can keep an eye on it. So what we're going to do is going to bring that to a full boil, and then we're going to turn down the heat to medium-low, keep cooking it topless, stirring occasionally until all the broth has absorbed into the quinoa. How do you know when it's done? When that part happens. That's why I don't even tell you time, okay? Cooking is never time. When all the liquid has been absorbed into the quinoa and or evaporated, because it's topless, then the quinoa is done. And you serve it however you like, side dish, whatever you want to do. You guys got this, right? We're also doing a couscous option. Let's have a look. Hey, it's boiling, I can tell. Look at that, yay! We have boiling water, all right. Boiling garlic salt water. That's awesome, Des. Fantastic. Come to the Chef Des Zoom classes and I'll teach you how to make boiling salted garlic water. All right, sign me up. So here's our bulgur wheat, all right, our cracked wheat berries. And now we're going to rehydrate them with this boiling garlic salt water. Let's grab a spoon. We'll give that a nice stir. And literally, we just let that sit now for 30 minutes. Be careful because you're putting a bowl of boiling water on your countertop. Have your wire mesh strainer standing by. If you look over here, actually I'll bring it closer to you guys here. Our quinoa is boiling. Okay, so crank it up until it boils and then turn it down to medium low. And all we're gonna do is have a spoon standing by and we're just gonna stir it occasionally. Look how sloshy it is. Is that a culinary term, sloshy? Sure, why not? See how sloshy it is? Lots of liquid in there. We want to cook that until all the liquid has gone, whether through evaporation or through absorption into the quinoa. Let's have a look at our quinoa. And you can see it's just barely bubbling. Okay, maybe I can turn it up a little bit, but the most important thing is that we're cooking it topless, no lid. Letting that water content evaporate out of there so we have better flavor, better color, better texture in our quinoa. So let it go, medium low. I turned it up just a touch. Let's just go back to our quinoa. Let's have a look. You're just stirring occasionally. You're looking at the water content. It's still, very sloshy. So we are not there yet. Just give it a good stir. Keep it going, medium low heat. So it's still liquidy, but just needs a good stir. I'm going to turn down the heat a little bit more. Still sloshy. Okay, I don't know if you can see that in there, but there's still lots of liquid, right? So we're just going to keep it going. It's all good. That's why we're cooking topless, so we can see it. We'll know exactly when it's done, when there's no liquid left. So now heat is still on, okay, medium low. And I don't know if you can see that, but I got maybe a quarter cup of liquid still at the bottom. Okay, so I'm just going to give it a good stir. As long as the heat is on low, medium, low, and as long as your lid is off, it's going to come together. You don't need to panic. All right, just let it go. It's time to check on the quinoa. Here we go. Yeah, I know we're going back and forth. I get that, but we don't want this to evaporate completely. Well, we do, but we don't want to go past that and then burn it or something, right? And have it like all dry and cooked on to the pot. So, hey, can you see that? I don't know if you can, if I can tilt you far enough, but there's no liquid left. There's none. Hey, you know what that means, right? We're done. And look at that beautiful quinoa. Look at that. Awesome. And when you taste that, it's so much more texture than cooking it like rice. Don't ever cook it like rice ever again. Let's take our couscous broth, the couscous option. We have 1 1/4 cups of vegetable broth in there. Hey, you know what? If you want to use chicken for all these broth options, you can use chicken. It doesn't really matter, okay? I'm just doing it so it's all vegetarian for people. To that, we're going to add 1 teaspoon of salt and 2 large garlic cloves chopped. Seems like a trend here, right? We're going to put a lid on that because things come to a boil faster with a lid, and we're going to bring that to a boil. Once that boils, here's the difference between the couscous and the bulgur wheat and the quinoa. So let's recap. Bulgur wheat, we put in a bowl, we saturate with a whole bunch of liquid, and we're going to drain it off in a strainer, okay? Quinoa, we put everything in a pot, cooked it till all the liquid was gone. That's it. Couscous is pasta. So little tiny bits of pasta. Let me show you this. If you got the couscous option, you can manipulate your couscous along with me, okay? But it's like little tiny balls of pasta. And that's really what it is. It's not a grain. It's not a seed, okay? It's pasta. And once that boils, all we got to do is just stir this in, shut off the heat, put the lid on it, fluff it with a fork in 5 minutes. That's it. There's no draining. There's no nothing. This is probably the easiest pasta ever to make. The only trick is to make sure you have your ratio right. So to 1 cup of couscous, as it states in the recipe there, you need 1 1/4 cups of liquid. You could probably get away with 1 1/2 cups and let it sit there a little bit longer. Totally fine. And you'll have cooked couscous, which is cooked pasta. Then, you know, put a little sauce on top of it, toss it with some garlic butter, and whatever you want to do. However you would serve a pasta dish, you could take that and literally serve it like pasta, because it's pasta, right? We're going to put it in a salad, maybe tonight, if I choose that option for myself. So we'll wait for that to come to a boil. Okay, it's boiling, it's boiling. Here we go. Shut off the heat. This is now, in case you've lost track from going back and forth, this is now the couscous option. So we have our 1.25 cups of broth, our teaspoon of salt, and our 2 large garlic cloves chopped. We brought it to a boil. We're going to take our couscous now. Sorry, let me tip you down here. Not that you can really see inside the pot very well. I'll try and get you a little closer. And we're just going to stir it together. Stir it, stir it, stir it. Fantastic. That's it. Put a lid on it. This is off the heat. Remember, there's no more heat now, okay? There's my timer for the bulgur. And we're just gonna let that stand for 5 minutes and we'll fluff it with a fork, okay? And let me show you over here what we're gonna do to finish our bulgur. So that was our timer. Remember our bulgur wheat? That was our timer to let it sit in the boiling water for 30 minutes. We're gonna get that wire mesh strainer, position it at our sink, and we're going to take that lovely bulgur wheat and drain it off. Drain all that excess water. And again, this is why I used water instead of broth in this scenario, because I'm just going to pour it down the sink anyway. Get our bulgur in there. So it's draining. Look at this. Most of it's drained off already, but you see what I mean, right? We're just gonna let that sit now. Just let that sit. It'll continue to drain. Make sure it doesn't fall. And that's our bulgur done. See how easy that is? Here we go. I'm going back to my couscous. It's been about 5 minutes now at least. And let me show you this. Let me show you this beautiful couscous and what we're gonna do here, all right? So take the lid off now. Remember, this is off the heat. It's just standing there. Watch this. Look at how beautiful. So you just fluff it up with a fork. See that? See how it's falling down like that? Oh, it's beautiful. And because it was added and the heat was turned off, there's never anything going to be burnt at the bottom, right? It's just sitting there off the heat. And you just fluff it up like that. It's beautiful. And it's pasta, right? It's cooked pasta. There you go. Awesome. So I'm just going to take that, set that aside. That's done. I know that's done. My quinoa is done. We have our bulgur draining. Fantastic.